Let me start with a question that might make you uncomfortable. If someone looked at your clothes, your phone, your car, or your lifestyle today, would they underestimate you? Good? Because that might be one of the biggest advantages you can ever have. In a world obsessed with appearances, looking poor is not a weakness, it's a strategy. It's a quiet, disciplined decision that separates people who build real wealth from people who only look rich. Most people spend their entire lives trying to prove something to strangers. The smartest people spend their lives building something for themselves. Here's the uncomfortable truth no one likes to hear. The pressure to look successful keeps more people broke than lack of income ever will. Expensive clothes, flashy gadgets, luxury cars on debt. These things don't make you wealthy. They make you busy maintaining an image. When you stop trying to look rich, you free up money, mental space, and energy, and that freedom is where real progress begins. You don't need applause at the start of your journey. You need patience, consistency, and focus. Looking poor teaches you discipline. It forces you to ask one powerful question before every purchase. Is this adding value to my future or just feeding my ego today? Wealthy thinking is boring. It doesn't feel exciting. It doesn't show up on Instagram stories, but it compounds silently. While others upgrade their lifestyle with every small raise, you invest in skills, assets, and opportunities. And years later, the gap becomes impossible to ignore. There's also a psychological advantage people don't talk about. When you look poor, expectations are low. Nobody pressures you to spend more. Nobody assumes you owe them anything. You move quietly. You learn faster, you make mistakes without judgment. Meanwhile, the person trying to look rich is trapped. One step back feels like failure. One downgrade feels like embarrassment. That fear keeps them stuck in a cycle they can't escape. Think about this deeply. Real wealth is the ability to say no. No to unnecessary expenses. No to social pressure. No to lifestyles you can't afford yet. When you look poor, you're practicing delayed gratification, the single most important habit behind long-term success. You're choosing future freedom over temporary validation. And that decision, repeated daily, changes everything. Let me be clear, this isn't about staying poor. It's about looking poor while you're building. It's about wearing simplicity as armor while your bank balance, skills, and investments grow in silence. Because when your money starts working harder than you do, nobody needs to know. Results don't need an announcement. Most people don't realize this, but the fastest way to lose control of your life is to start living for other people's opinions. The moment you begin shaping your decisions around how you look to others, your focus is no longer yours. It belongs to society, trends, and expectations that change every few months. Looking poor, or more accurately living without the need to impress, creates a powerful mental shield. It removes noise. It strips life down to what truly matters. When you're not constantly trying to signal success, your mind becomes sharper, calmer, and more intentional. Here's a hard truth that few are willing to accept. You don't lose focus because you're lazy. You lose focus because you're distracted. Distraction doesn't always come from social media or entertainment. Sometimes it comes dressed as ambition, lifestyle upgrades, and the pressure to look successful. Every unnecessary purchase, every comparison, every attempt to keep up pulls your attention away from your long-term goals. Looking poor breaks this cycle. It quietly tells the world, I'm not playing that game. And in doing so, it gives you back control over your time and energy. When you stop caring about appearances, something interesting happens. You start thinking in terms of value instead of validation. You ask better questions. Does this help me grow? Does this improve my future? Does this move me closer to freedom? These questions sharpen your focus like nothing else. While others are busy curating an image, you are investing in skills, knowledge, and systems that actually change your life. This is not flashy work. It's slow, repetitive, and often invisible. But it is the kind of work that compounds. There is also a hidden psychological advantage in being underestimated. When people assume you have less, they expect less. That means less pressure, less judgment, and fewer distractions. You're allowed to learn quietly. You're allowed to fail without an audience. You're allowed to experiment without fear of losing status. This environment is perfect for deep focus. Growth thrives in silence, not spotlight. The need to look rich forces people into constant performance mode. Looking poor allows you to stay in building mode. Another reason focus improves is because simplicity reduces decision fatigue. When your lifestyle is minimal, your mind isn't cluttered with maintenance. No constant upgrades, no stress of sustaining an image, no anxiety about falling behind. Your mental energy is reserved for things that actually move the needle. This is why some of the most successful people in the world dress simply and live quietly. It's not because they can't afford more. It's because focus is more valuable than luxury. Think about how powerful this is. While others are burning money to look successful, you're buying time. While others are chasing attention, you're building competence. While others are distracted by short-term pleasures, you're locked in on long-term results. Looking poor is not about deprivation, it's about direction. It aligns your daily choices with your future goals instead of your current emotions. And here's the hook most people miss. Focus is the real currency of success. Money follows focus, not the other way around. When you protect your focus early, you set yourself up to win later. Looking poor helps you do that because it removes the constant need to perform, compare, and prove. It gives you permission to grow slowly, deliberately, and intelligently. In a world obsessed with showing progress, choosing to build in silence is not weakness, it's strategy. Most people believe wealth is something you earn, but in reality, wealth is something you practice. It is built in the smallest, most ordinary decisions made every single day. Looking poor or living below your means, even when you don't have to, is not about limitation. It is about training your behavior. And behavior, not income, determines whether money stays with you or quietly disappears. This is why two people can earn the same amount and end up in completely different financial positions. One learns to control money, the other learns to impress people. Here's a powerful truth that often gets ignored. Every time you spend money to look successful, you are reinforcing the habit of choosing short-term satisfaction over long-term stability. That habit doesn't disappear when your income increases. It grows with you. Looking poor interrupts that pattern. It forces you to slow down before spending, to question your impulses, and to develop discipline. Discipline is not restrictive. Discipline is what gives money direction. Without it, even large incomes leak away unnoticed. When you choose simplicity, you start building a relationship with money based on respect rather than emotion. You stop using spending as a reward, a coping mechanism, or a way to feel important. Instead, money becomes a tool to buy time, options, and security. This shift is subtle, but it changes everything. You begin to see money not as something to show, but as something to grow. And growth requires patience, consistency, and restraint. There is a reason most self-made wealthy individuals look unimpressive in their early years. They are too busy building habits that last. They track expenses. They invest before they upgrade. They delay gratification even when it feels uncomfortable. Looking poor makes this process easier because it removes temptation. When your lifestyle is modest, your expectations stay grounded. You are less likely to inflate your spending with every small increase in income, and that single habit alone creates a massive long-term advantage. Another important aspect is how looking poor sharpens your decision making. When resources are limited by choice, not necessity, you learn to prioritize. You learn the difference between wants and needs. You learn to say no without guilt. These decisions strengthen your financial muscle. Over time, this muscle becomes automatic. You don't feel deprived, you feel in control. And control is the foundation of financial freedom. Here's the hook most people miss. Wealth habits don't suddenly appear when you become rich. They must exist before the money arrives. If you can't manage a small amount with discipline, a large amount will only amplify your weaknesses. Looking poor is like financial training in a low-risk environment. It allows you to make mistakes, learn lessons, and refine your habits before the stakes become high. Living below your means also creates margin, and margin creates opportunity. When your expenses are low, you have flexibility. You can invest when others panic. You can take calculated risks without fear. You can walk away from bad situations because you're not financially trapped. This is the quiet power of good wealth habits. They don't announce themselves, but they protect you when it matters most. Over time, these habits compound. Savings turn into investments. Investments turn into assets. Assets create income. And all of it started with the decision to live simply when you could have chosen to show off. Looking poor is not about denying yourself a good life. It's about building a life where money works for you instead of controlling you. Most people underestimate the power of patience because patience doesn't feel productive. It doesn't look impressive. It doesn't give instant rewards. In a world that celebrates speed upgrades and overnight success, patience feels like falling behind. But in reality, patience is the hidden advantage that quietly separates those who struggle for decades from those who eventually gain control over their lives. Looking Poor trains this patience daily. It teaches you to wait, to hold back, and to choose long-term freedom over short-term comfort. Here's the uncomfortable hook. If you can't wait, you can't win. Every rush decision in life is usually driven by emotion. Fear of missing out, fear of judgment, fear of being seen as less. Looking Poor removes these pressures. When you stop trying to prove your success externally, you gain the ability to pause. And that pause is powerful. It allows you to think clearly, act intentionally, and avoid decisions that feel good now but cost you later. Patience changes how you handle money, opportunities, and even setbacks. When you're not obsessed with appearances, you don't feel the need to rush milestones. You don't need the newest phone, the biggest lifestyle upgrade, or the instant reward. You learn to sit with discomfort without reacting. This skill is rare, and that's why it's valuable. Most people quit, spend, or panic too early. The patient ones stay in the game long enough for compounding to do its work. There is also a deep emotional strength that comes from patience. When you can delay gratification, you are no longer controlled by impulses. You stop making decisions just to feel better in the moment. Instead, you make decisions that protect your future self. Looking Poor reinforces this mindset because it constantly reminds you that you are building something bigger than today's desires. It keeps your ego in check and your vision intact. Another powerful aspect of patience is how it improves decision making under pressure. When you are financially stretched or living for appearances, every setback feels like an emergency. But when you live simply and below your means, you have room to breathe. You can wait for better opportunities. You can say no without panic. You can recover from mistakes without desperation. That ability to stay calm while others rush is a massive competitive advantage. People often think success comes from doing more faster. In reality, success often comes from waiting longer than others are willing to. Waiting to invest until you understand, waiting to upgrade until it makes sense, waiting to commit until the timing is right. Looking Poor supports this mindset by removing artificial deadlines created by social comparison. You are no longer racing anyone. You are running your own race. Here's a truth that rarely gets discussed. Patience protects you from bad luck and positions you for good luck. When you're not in a hurry, you notice details others miss. You prepare quietly. You build resilience. And when the right opportunity appears, you're ready. Most people miss opportunities not because they lack talent, but because they lack patience. Over time, this patience compounds just like money. Small, disciplined choices add up. Quiet consistency beats loud effort. Looking Poor today gives you the space to grow steadily, without pressure, without noise, and without regret. It allows you to stay focused on what truly matters, even when progress feels slow. And in a world addicted to instant results, patience isn't just an advantage, it's a superpower.